Hi, this is Genice Lee, the appraiser, and this is part 2 of a Caregivers workshop I participated in. During the workshop, we discussed the importance of inventorying and how to use the inventory for various scenarios, from damage and loss to estate planning to even downsizing and moving. I hope you enjoy it. I see a few people still writing a little bit. Okay, so we're going to stop here. How many people had 15 items on their list? Okay, who had more than 15? Who had more than 20? Okay. You have 21. Anyone have more than 21? How many? 29. Think about this scenario. We're sitting in a very calm setting. You kind of got a little bit of time to reflect. How many found it kind of difficult to think in detail about what every little thing in the living room? Do you think you missed some stuff? Now, think of trying to create this list if your house is burned to the ground. Or your basement's flooded and you've got 4 rooms. And you've got mold-covered wet stuff. And you're screaming at the insurance company or the contractor. How stressful. And so this really, again, is a tool to help you be proactive. We talked a lot about these scenarios making us be reactive. This tool is going to help you to be proactive. Okay. We're going to take a look at a spreadsheet. I had kind of created one that I sometimes use with clients. So we did the living room, right? Okay, so let's go to the living room tab. Let's just go through some of the things on the living room tab. Books, cassette players, DVD, VCR, GameCube, iPod, iPods, iTouch, Walkmans, PCS3, Game Boy, Nintendo, speakers, stereo systems, turntables, TV, video games, Xbox, movie DVDs, movie VHS, music albums, music CDs, VCRs, armoire, bean bags, bench storage, bookcase, chair, chest, coffee table, end table, entertainment unit, footstool, game table, ottoman, shelf unit, sofa table, love seat, stool, wall unit, backgammon set, battleship game, cards, chess, dominoes, puzzles, Scrabble. So they go through all these games. Coffee book tables, collections, display racks, drink coasters, vases, TV stands, throw pillows, throw blankets, stained glass, shadow box, sculptures. Do you see the importance of the detail? Okay, it's the detail. Okay, so this spreadsheet provides a tab for your kitchen and everything in your kitchen down to baking powder and baking soda, oil, soy sauce, casserole dish, pressure cooker, okay, loaf pans, mason jars, pizza pans, okay. Let's jump into the bedroom. Now we've got phones, we've got blankets, duvet covers, quilts, sheets, throw pillows, shoes. There's a section that begins to help you inventory your shoes. Let's move to the bathroom. Wall art. Oh, disinfectants, medications, aftershave, hair clippers, cologne. Okay, in your dining room. Sofa tables, wine racks, candles, candlesticks, vases, wine coolers. Okay, in the den, if you have a den. Okay, printers, scanners, office chairs. In the laundry room, what you might have in the laundry room. Steam mops, vacuum cleaners. Okay, in your recreation room, what you might have. Bike racks, bike towels, camping tools. Did anybody have those things? I mean, these are the things that would go on your inventory. Things that are outdoor. So this is a very detailed inventory list. You have a tab for the rooms, the year that you acquired it, how many of it you have, what condition is it in, and there's even a section for notes or for you to add a picture, because you can put thumbnail shots. Drop the picture so you can see it. This is some information that I would add that wasn't included in the spreadsheet. Okay, measurements. So whenever I'm working with a client, I show up with my handy dandy tape measure or ruler, not a ruler, but it folds out. It's It's more of a contracting ruler, it folds. And so we're gonna talk about how you wanna put the measurements in. And what does this matter? It matters, when people are downsizing and they're moving from one facility to another. Sometimes you need to know the size of the furniture to decide if you wanna keep it or get rid of it. So you'll have the measurements already in your spreadsheet. You don't have to go out and remeasure everything. It's like, oh yeah, that piece is in this room and I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna check to see if that would fit in this particular space in my new place. Whether it's assisted living, you're helping an elderly person, or you're moving yourself. So we're looking at objects that are three-dimensional. You're gonna measure it by the height, depth, or the length and width, and sometimes the diameter, depending on the object. And then a lot of the two-dimensional measurements apply strictly to artwork. You know, it's flat, it's up against the wall, you're gonna measure it. Another thing that you can add to your spreadsheet is serial numbers on your computers, on TV sets, on VHSs, if people even use those anymore, VCRs. You're gonna include those. And then again, the pictures that you can add to a column in the spreadsheet. Or if you don't want to, you're not tech savvy or Excel literate and all that copy, paste, and dropping is bothersome, you can take the pictures and you can label the picture by room. You need to understand what you're looking at. You want to keep an electronic copy of this inventory or a hard copy up in the iCloud, in a safety deposit box, on a flash drive, email it to yourself, but you need to have it in some place other than your physical residence so that you can get access to it should something happen to that primary residence. This is why you need the spreadsheet. I cannot tell you how many times I have two clients right now that have contacted me, a woman who's just very frustrated because for some reason her basement is flooded. This is the third time the contractors did not get it right. And now you're talking about water damage, molds, lizards running through her basement. And she sent me a list, which was great. She sent me a list. But then her sons pointed out to her, Mom, that's not half the stuff you had. Because she's frustrated and tired and angry. Back to the question I asked earlier. Now imagine trying to remember all of those things and you're angry or frustrated or upset. Trying to prove the case to the insurance company when your documentation is as tight as that spreadsheet with pictures and measurements of every room, they will be hard pressed to fight you. But a lot of times we don't have that documentation in place. So it's an uphill battle proving that you actually own those things. And so that's why this spreadsheet is so great as far as even in damage and loss, helping you to prove that point. What you'll find is that as far as insurance coverage, which is something that comes up when I'm working with clients as well, is if you are a collector and you have art collections. I've worked with some people, their art would pay for some college tuitions. And they have additional coverage on that art. Martin and I, we have additional coverage on our wedding rings. They're not under our general homeowners policy. There's an additional rider on that jewelry. And so yes, you will find that with jewelry, you do yourself a service to have them assessed separately in appraisal and an additional coverage on them should a diamond fall out or somebody break in your house and steal it. And it does happen. Overwhelmed at the thought of inventorying your home. Well, you could start with small steps, but the goal is to get started. You could work on a room. You could work on a closet. You might set a goal for yourself that you're going to finish. I'm going to finish this closet in a week. I'm going to finish my bedroom in a month. Or you could do it by quarter. You might want to approach doing the inventory by type. So again, that's where the jewelry comes in. Is it, real gold? Is it costume? We're going to talk a little bit about taking a closer look at some of these things to help you better understand what you have. A lot of times, part of the hiccup in this process is people don't understand the value of what they have or what they should be focused in on or paying more attention to. You may want to do your furniture. You may want to go through your clothes. We just did our closets for the spring. 10 bags of clothes from all parties involved, and there's just 3 of us. taking a closer look. What are some of the things that we should take a closer look at? Jewelry. If you're wearing jewelry and you want to make an attempt to take a quick look, this is a jeweler's loupe. And the way that you look at jewelry is you hold the loupe still and you move the jewelry in. Usually, most jewelry is stamped. Real jewelry is stamped on the inside. This piece is actually stamped 14K, and you should see it. So if you have a piece of jewelry, you want to take it off and take a closer look at it. What you're looking for are the marks on the jewelry to help you understand, is it real gold or silver, or is it costume? Because it makes a difference. I typically just do a cursory check to make sure that you're not giving platinum diamond ring to the Goodwill. Because if you've ever handled platinum, it is quite weighty, and holding it in your hand, you can tell. This is platinum, so you're gonna wanna take it to a certified jewelry appraiser, because I'm not qualified to assess the value of the diamond and all of that. But all of this is costume, or this pile is sterling silver. Usually sterling is stamped. It'll say, if you pick up the item and look at the bottom, if you have like silver pieces, a lot of times people will call me and say, oh, I want you to look at my silver. And I'll say, is it sterling or is it silver plate? Oh, I don't know. So an easy way to know is that sterling is typically stamped sterling on the back of the piece of the silver, and that it is also stamped with 925 on jewelry and on pieces, and that's how you know the difference. When we're talking about costume jewelry, a lot of times costume jewelry is stamped with a name such as Trafari on the back, and those things tend to be collectible, so they're worth a little more money than costume jewelry that has no name on it. And so that's a closer look item for you, the jewelry. Let's talk about glass versus crystal. I'll come into a home and they'll be like, yeah, all that glass stuff in the china cabinet. And so I will take a look at it and I will pick it up and I will check to see if it is crystal versus glass. We're talking about weight is a factor in crystal versus glass. Crystal is heavier than glass. Lead crystal, you've got that lead weight. And then crystal also rings when you strike it lightly. And it was funny, my husband said, well, how do you strike it? I said, well, we're not trying to break it or crack it. So you're gonna take maybe a plastic pin and say this were the crystal glass. You're just gonna take the pin and tap it around the rim and it rings. Glass goes thud, thud. I don't personally own any crystal, so I didn't bring an example, but it will make a ringing sound. I typically find when I go into someone's home is they have china services, and so what you're doing with the china is you're going to look at the back, which typically has the name of the maker stamped on the back, on the bottom of a plate, on the back of a cup, and you can go to replacement.com to look at the pattern. You can look at the pattern a few ways. You can look at the pattern by the maker's name, and you can look at the pattern by picture. I'm very visual, so I can have an object and I can flip through hundreds of pictures and go, no, that's not it, that's not it, that's not it, that's it. Oh, there it is, and it will give you the value so you can understand about the china, whether, what the value of the china is. One, it's important that people, yes, do understand what's covered in a general policy, and what you want to understand is, does that policy cover the value threshold? Because I'll give another example. I met with a client recently, an elderly person, and I met with her because she had some flood damage in her basement and she had some art that was damaged. So I was there to initially look at that. Well, she's looking at downsizing, and she had an additional 36 pieces of art. And it was like, oh, okay, well, while you're here, why don't I have you take a look at that so you can see if it's of any significant value. It was art that she didn't personally collect. Her husband was really into it. And so I'm taking pictures and I'm doing the inventory for the appraisal. And I get to this one artist and I was like, oh my gosh, you got one of these in your collection. I mean, some of my clients are very passionate about their art, and I typically don't get excited, but I got excited. It is because she had a piece by Jacob Lawrence. And if any of you have been following African American art in the news lately, African American art is doing very well. An original by Jacob Lawrence recently sold for $4 million in oil on canvas. Now, she didn't have oil on canvas, but she did have a print from a very popular collection. And because I had recently done an appraisal for another client who had some pieces out of that series, I knew that that one print was worth $10,000 to $14,000. And she was like, who? Who are you talking about? And I'm in there going, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. So, yes, that $10,000 print makes a significant difference in your insurance coverage. So yeah, it is important as we amass things, or you may not be collecting that caliber of artwork, but even your jewelry. What happens is those things start adding up. You know, these are some things that drive value. When people contact me and they're like, well, why is this worth more than this? Well, we're talking about availability, desirability, how much of it is out there in the marketplace. And so you find that objects that deteriorate or get easily broken or chipped, they're more expensive because they get handled more. How likely are you to find this particular object without a chip in it, or somebody hasn't broken it? And just over time, I mean, I know lots of glass has been broken in my house where it's like, whoops. And so if someone can keep it intact and hand it down, there's less of it out there. And so it increases the value. Yeah. How does the inventory help me to plan? Someone called me, and this is a question I get often. Someone called me and said, we don't necessarily know if we need an appraisal, but we want to understand the values. I'm just going to be very honest with you. I'm very honest with people when they call me. I cannot tell you if you need an appraisal because I've given you an appraisal. If I've told you that it needs to be valued, then I've just given you a value. And so that's really what you're coming to me and paying me for as far as my expertise, to tell you, is it worth it or not? I had someone contact me about a document they found, and we were going back and forth about should I get an appraisal, should I not get an appraisal? Oh, I looked on the internet. This is my sentiment about the internet. There's a whole lot of information on the internet, and you can have information, but do you know what to do with the information? So she said, oh, I saw documents similar to it. They were from 300 to 3,000. Well, what should I do? I don't know. What are you gonna do? I can't tell you whether it's on the 300 end, the 3,000 end, or more unless I do the research for myself, and that's what you're paying me to do. And I will honestly say she finally made the decision to move forward with the appraisal, and I wish I could have seen her face when she saw that number. That document was worth $8,000. That's where I really try to encourage people, you know, don't be penny wise and pound foolish. As an appraiser, I do understand that it can be a costly process, but there are services that appraisers can offer. Well, I wouldn't do a full-blown appraisal. You send me the pictures, we talk about the objects, I check, and I give you an assessment on those items. It's called a market analysis. It's not a full-blown appraisal. Full-blown appraisals for insurance, for probate, for charitable contributions, I have to do a lot more detail in those reports because those are documents going to the court, those are documents going to the IRS, and those are documents going to your insurance company, so that if that Jacob Lawrence is damaged, people who may not necessarily understand African American art can understand why that piece that you have is so significant that they have to insure it for $15,000, $16,000 if it gets damaged. You may understand a Picasso, but you may not understand Jacob Lawrence, depending on who you're dealing with. And so as the appraiser, that's my job to help to make sure they understand what you have, because I'm clear, they may not be clear. And I've had that battle before with a company that contacted me from the Midwest that had an art piece that was damaged. Their appraiser came up with $450. My appraisal said $4,500 because the piece was damaged. And I explained why. And when their adjuster called me and asked me why, I was able to say, does your adjuster understand the African American art market? Did your adjuster talk to the artist? Do they understand that the artist no longer creates pieces like that, so it would be a custom remake? Does your adjuster understand that when porcelain is damaged, no collector wants a damaged or cracked piece, and so they would have to recreate it? This is what it would cost for them to recreate it. That's why we have to know what we have. And sometimes other people don't understand that some of the things that we have are valuable to us, and why. After the inventory process, you will be very clear about what you have. You may decide to give it away now while you're living versus putting them in your will. That's another way to kind of sort through and get rid of the things that you have. In that deciding to give away, you may want to label the things you want to give away with a note as to why you want them to have it and why it's important to you. So, for example, in your granddaughter, there may be something that's not of an extremely high value, but it may have been something that you got from your grandmother or your great-grandmother. And so you take that object and you write a note to your granddaughter saying, and this is why it's important to our family and this is why I want you to have it. And so you put the note with the object, and that helps people to understand, well, why did you want to give me that? Because sometimes people get things and they're like, well, what is this? You help them to understand why it's important to your family. What if nobody wants anything? Yes, nobody wants your grandparents' stuff. Nobody wants your stuff. This is an article I pulled from Forbes magazine that talks about that very problem. And that's a problem that I find that I'm getting more and more as I deal with clients. They'll say, oh, my children don't want this painted plate collection that I collected all this time. Oh, you know, my grandchildren don't want it, or this person doesn't want it, or I got my mom's stuff. What do I do with it? If nobody wants it, and that's an article for you to take a look at, this occurring problem, and you may find yourself dealing with that problem. In my scenario with my mom, she left us her furniture, my sister and myself, and my mom had great taste, but she lived in Washington. I didn't want to pay to ship it here. And I had my own house full of furniture. What do you do with that? What do you do with those things? Well, you may want to donate them to charity. Again, this is where your inventory comes into play. You can add a column and you could say, okay, these things that I inherited from my mom or my grandmother, oh, I'm not really interested in them. I tried to give them away to somebody in the family. Okay, this is going to go to Salvation Army, this is going to go to Goodwill, this is going to go to the shelter that helps animals. You may want to donate them to a museum in your name. You all do understand, just as you get the charitable the write-off when you donate to the Goodwill, Salvation Army, that if you were to donate art to a museum, you get to take the tax write-off for the item you've donated. And so with the African American Museum, I had a gentleman contact me. His father or grandfather was a Tuskegee Airman. They donated his coat, hats, and the family took a tax write-off for the value of the items donated to the new African American Museum. So you can donate to charities, historic houses, libraries. Back to that value question. Oh my gosh, now I understand that piece of Haitian art is not $50, but $500. I think I want to sell it. The inventory process can help you decide what things to give away, keep, and sell. Or back to the what if nobody wants it? Well, you know, you can go on Craigslist and list it for free and people will come get it. They will come pick it up off the curbside and take it away. There are some things that if I'm not sure, then I would, if I get a client who has something that I'm not up to par, up to speed on, then I will consult with another colleague who has that expertise. So if I can't help you, I always make sure that in dealing with me, I lead you to someone who can help you. This was during the question and answer portion of the workshop where I was addressing a situation pertaining to hoarding. It's going to depend on the appraiser. I've stepped into hoarding situations which can just be, it was just disheartening for me. And the assisting was just to get rid of the stuff that needed to go in the garbage, like stuff in the basement with mold on it. Nobody wants that. You can't sell it. And we had like 15 bags in the basement against the door to go out. You know, there are professionals that will assist you in a hoarding situation. Here's another kind of thing that might blow your mind, and it can get kind of crazy. You know, we think of objects as being valuable because of the significance in our community and what we've done that has been so underspoken about. Now we're finding that with the creation of these larger museums, one of the things that drives value is you haven't seen a lot of it, it's unknown. A lot of our stories are untold. And so I had a client whose great uncle left her all this paperwork, this documentation, and you would think, oh, it's paper, throw it in the garbage. It appraised for double-digit $1,000. I went in and appraised it because of the significance of the story that his paperwork told. So you even have to be careful in people just chucking paperwork, depending on the role that relative, we were able to now get a side of history that we didn't hear about before. We only heard one side of the story. His paperwork told us the other side, and so it was valuable. And so I think that's the case with, you know, a lot of things in the African American community, the untold stories. I mean, that's something that I love. It's just so rewarding for me to be able to share in our stories, a lot of them untold. I had another client whose husband was one of the first admitted to Georgetown's dental school. I asked her, what are you doing with his papers? You all need to make sure you get his papers. Make sure you don't throw them away. Make sure you collect them so that somebody can hear his story. I would recommend that perhaps you try to see if there are companies that work in hoarding situations to clear things out so that you can get to assessing value if there is any value. If I don't feel comfortable, then don't work with them. Yeah, if there's any red flag, any check, no, that's not the people for you to work with, because it's very important, because people are coming into your private space, that you feel comfortable with them being in that space. I had an attorney ask me to work with someone who had this massive doll collection, and it was this scenario of 4 deaths and things in that house belonging to these 4 people. And we couldn't get anything done because the person wanted to be involved in every little step. And it was just very frustrating to me. And I was like, Lord, what is going on with this woman that we can't do this? This shouldn't be this hard. And finally, I mentioned it to another colleague of mine, and she was like, she needs counseling because she's grieving. And I was like, you know what? And so I told that attorney, you need to talk to the family about perhaps having her get counseling so this process can move along. Because it was like, oh, that's my dead brother's, and his daughter needs to come over, but I need to sit there and I need to help her pick stuff out. Why? So yes, it can be a needing a therapy thing going on that they need some help with. Okay, having a family meeting to discuss how things are to be distributed. And again, what are the realistic dynamics of your family? Can you really do that? Can you sit down and have that conversation? I'll give you an example. When my father passed away, and we found there was no paperwork, and so I'm visiting my mom, because that's where I stayed, because I had to fly back to Washington State to settle his estate because that 30-day lockdown. And her current husband was looking at us, and we were talking about her, how, you know, where her paperwork was, and so we're talking about where's this and where's that, and I'm taking notes and I'm writing it down, and her husband is looking at us like, why are you all talking about that? Because it makes sense. This going on, this not knowing anything, this is crazy for the people who are left to deal with it. You're trying to figure everything out. You don't know where paperwork is. You don't know if they had, what they had. And he was looking at us like we were crazy. He's like, well, the man just died. And we were like, yeah, he's dead. I'm not trying to be unkind. He's dead. And that person is gone. But those who are still living want those bills paid. They want to know where that money is. They're not too concerned with the fact that the person has moved on. They want you to handle what's going on here in the life in the land of the living. And so for you to do that, you have to talk about it. But nonetheless, it was to my benefit when it was all said and done. So again, we talked a little bit about damage and loss claims, how you can add a column to the spreadsheet. This is back to how do you use this inventory as your tool. You can add the name of who the items will be distributed to. You can add that as part of the process for your will to help manage items for insurance that may need extra rider. We talked about the jewelry not being adequately covered. And finally, the inventory tool allows you to be proactive and not reactive. Putting the energy into working on this one thing can help you with your estate planning, can help you if there's damage and loss, can help you in a move, can help you with downsizing. And so yes, back to you looking at all the rooms and all the stuff, and it could be overwhelming, but you know, you remember the old saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You're not going to try to scarf it all down, but do a little bit at a time. And I really think that you all will benefit from having this inventory as you look at these different seasons in your life. I hope you found this session informative. If you missed the first part, please go and check it out. There is a PDF link in the discussion section that would allow you to access the handouts from that first session. Also, check out my other channels where I share information that you may find useful around appraising, damage and loss, and estate planning. Thank you. You can also find links to my other platforms in the description box.